A project that is this big is both terrifying and exciting at the same time. So you can't really let either of those emotions kind of overwhelm you, or you'll just like paralyze and then you won't do anything. So it's a good tension to be a little bit afraid and to also be excited at the same time. I've got great artists working with me, a phenomenal cast, and a great crew. So to some extent that's taken the curse off it a little bit, because I know I can trust these other people. But you have to get a lot of rest, to get a lot of sleep, and you have to try to keep the worry to a minimum.
We scouted Australia, we scouted Tunisia, Morocco. I was in Namibia and had a look at the desert there, which is extraordinary. I also spent 3 days in the desert where the wind didn't stop blowing at 45 miles an hour. In other words, it wasn't gusty. It was a steady 45-mile-an-hour wind. Well, you can't be out there and not have sand get into everything. And that sort of focused me a little bit and on the difficulties in shooting in the desert.
I had to make a choice early on to use the resources that I was given in the most effective way. And that meant I could either go on location in certain places and shoot with what was there, the desert, the mountains, the caves, and the light that was there. And that's a critical issue, because with the schedule that I was provided, I would be shooting this movie mostly in available light. And that meant in the harsh, flat light of midday, mostly. So I made a decision with Vittorio and with Kreka to do a lot of this work on the sound stages in Prague, so that we could maximize Vittorio's use of color and light and Kreka's design capabilities. And in the end, I feel that we were able to create environments that you can't find anywhere on Earth. I chose Prague for a variety of reasons. I had done a lot of extensive research scouting over through North Africa and Europe. Prague had a working environment that was very conducive to what we wanted to do. It's economically sound, and by that I mean it's cheaper than many other places. It had a very deep talent pool, both in terms of on-camera and behind-the-scenes camera talent. It had the biggest sound stages in Europe, fully functional. And it had a working environment, I mean, just a place to live for the length of time that we were going to be there, which was very pleasant.
The first time when I came on the set, on the Dune, was very excited, because the job what all the people did was great. You know, all the sand, all the buildings, or you know, the big screen and things like that was just amazing. So, but the work on this set was very hard.
Working on stage 6 at Barrandov Studios in Prague, that was filled with sand, it was basically like trying to work on the beach for 6 weeks. So if you can imagine walking on the beach for 8 to 12 hours a day, up and down sand dunes, trying to put cameras, trying to get actors to work, breathing this stuff in the air constantly, I think we were all kind of happy to get out of there.
We couldn't breathe because there wasn't, you know, opportunity to go anywhere. We were working there for 10 hours, and it was very hard. And walking in the sand, especially the run, was very hard, especially for me.
All that goes through me, only I will remain.
He's too close.
He's not leaving enough room.
I can second him. It's allowed even in the test. No!
It was amazing because when we were at the desert sets and the desert studio, it was the middle of basically the deepest, darkest December, you know, for a great majority of the time we were there. So you go into this desert set and it's supposed to be like, I don't know, 95 degrees and you're in a still suit and you're covered in sweat and you go outside, it was snowing and it was dark.
We enjoyed. We had a lot of fun there, and especially with the worms. We were just standing on a piece of something which we'll use to computer, and you're just standing on that and pretending something. It was a very nice experience.
One, then up. Okay, it's got to be. You got to grab it. The fact that he grabs it, okay, is what pulls him up.
My name is Ernie Farino. I'm the visual effects supervisor on Dune, and also the second unit director. We had a full-scale section of the what we called the worm skin, which we had actors and stunt people on top of as they're riding atop the worm, and all of this was in front of a big green screen, as you can see behind me here, to combine with the desert backgrounds as well as the rest of the worm, which we'll fill in.
In Prague, Ernie Farino, the visual effects supervisor, shot actors in front of green screens, and they stood essentially on a huge curved section of worm that kind of looked like giant tree bark, and they basically stood on that and waved their arms and, you know, with their swords around, and then leapt off into battle. That was what we were given, and what we did for those shots is, since the Dune landscape is completely artificial and computer generated, we would put CG shots behind the actors, so you would see mountains disappearing, dust, clouds of dust, you know, the back of the worm kind of undulating, and a few thopters whizzing by.
Another category of effects is the thopter, as we've touched on here. The thopter and other spacecraft that are seen in orbit around the planet, and various other scenes of spacecraft flying around.
Hello, I'm Alec Newman. I'm playing Paul Atreides in Dune, the miniseries, and this behind you is a thopter. To give it its full and proper name, it's an ornithopter. Read the book, it's there, it's true. Now, this thopter is the very same thopter that Paul and Jessica use to escape from the Harkonnen when they're in the siege with Duncan, Idaho. It's after the Atreides palace has been invaded by those very same evil, nasty, fat, sweaty Harkonnen. And it also features in a lot of the story. It's very, very nippy in the desert, thank you very much. Plush leather interior, CD, everything, the works. But there's no smoking, says the stewardess in said thopter. So these go. There it is.
This, of course, has been built full scale on set so that the actors can be involved interacting with it directly. We're then going to build a CGI version, which is computer graphics version that will actually do all the flying around and the fighting and the shooting of rockets and all of that kind of stuff. So the combination of these visual effects plus the actual physical full-scale version will create the illusion that we have a whole fleet of thopters flying around the planet Arrakis.
What that is a missile that's coming towards camera. This particular shot, Paul and his mom are leaving Duncan, Idaho, and they're, hey, have fun storming the castle, we're out of here. They're taking off, and as the camera gets high, totally unbeknownst to them, two bad guys come out of the sun and fire a missile towards camera. There they are. They've now popped, and we're fading them on so that they're coming out of the sun, and now they're firing a missile towards us. So the illusion on film is, okay, we're up there, clean sky, sun behind them, and all of a sudden, oh my God, there's bad guys.
The biggest challenge to a project like this is not only the scope and the size of it, but just the fact that you are creating a fully fictional science fiction world. I've always felt that visual effects are like cinematography or music or any other aspect of making a film are one of the tools that helps tell the story, and so it has to be realistic, but of course interesting and exciting and dramatic.
Do it now!
Dune is an adventure novel to me, an adventure epic. I was adamant that we did not do it as a green screen show. And by that I mean I didn't want to create an environment that basically had one or two props and the rest of the room was green and the actors were acting against something we would create much later in CG. Because I didn't feel, first of all, that we could accurately portray the world that I wanted. I didn't think that the actors could act in the world as well. I was lucky enough to get Vittorio Storaro, who came to me and suggested a technique that he had perfected over many other films called translights, where we could actually enlarge the environments that we were dealing with by creating huge tapestries of backgrounds that we would create on the computer and then photograph and build into the sets that Kreka was designing.
Straight face.
What am I doing? Of life. That's enough now.
The combination of him and John has worked so fantastically because Vittorio is, he doesn't just stick a light in and roll the camera, you know, and no cinematographer ever does, of course, but he came up with this huge theory about Dune, and he'd worked to get to that in conjunction with John, in a way, so that he has this whole light plan for the whole thing, and his idea is that Dune is, as well as anything else, the journey of Paul Atreides from the boy that he begins the story as to enlightenment. We're using these translights, which are wonderful.
We pushed with John Harrison the chance to build practically the desert into a studio here in Prague, practically mixing several images, photographs that I took when I was in my early journey in Africa, during Sheltered Sky, during Easter, any other project that I did previously. Mixing those images, we were able to create a new image, a totally fantastic image that was, we were able to print in a huge size. I'm talking about 30 feet for 250 feet. So we were able to create in this incredible vision, surrounding the entire stage, so an actor, instead to have just green screen around, can really see where it is. The production, myself, John, instead to do every shot with the digital cinematography, with the special effect, we were able just to see directly on the camera what we were supposed to do.
Can you hear that?
Worm. Must have heard the sand fall. Run! Just run!
He has such wonderful ideas, and it's very stimulating being around somebody who's that experienced. He was a huge factor for me in accepting such a huge job, such a large undertaking. The fact that Storaro was shooting this was an enormous pull for me to be involved in this project on something that I'd never done before. I was very curious to see how someone like him worked.
One of ours.
Can't take the chance.
Some of the time, you might think, well, hang on, they're not in the Sahara. because that doesn't look like the Sahara. But that's not the point. Dune is a story of the imagination, if you like, you know. So those environments on some of the images that are in the film hopefully will encourage people to tap into the areas of their imagination.
We decided at one point to investigate the possibility of creating a completely fantasy-oriented world, totally on stage. And the result is the world of Dune that we've created. A completely unique vision of Dune.
There's no way you can measure his input. It's beautiful. You're actually experiencing light changes during the take. It's extraordinary to feel and sense spontaneously when you're doing the scene his understanding of the scene. And you feel that. You feel painted on, and you react, and it helps you to feel because you feel engaged, you feel communicated with.
Go close a little bit, Mauro. Vai un pochino più vicino alle... Piano, piano, piano. Oh, fermo, 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 troppo, torna indietro.
Well, it's been a phenomenal experience because he has been able to take what I created on paper and what I discussed intellectually and turn it into a visual feast. When Frank and I started talking about Dune, we decided that we really needed different, unique visions for each of the locales of Dune. And in order for us to understand the difference culturally from one to the other, we had to do that with visual cues. And so Kreka has come up with architectural design which basically in a glance tells you the difference between the Harkonnen and the Atreides, between the palace of the Imperial Emperor Shaddam and the Fremen communities in the deep desert. The planet Kaitain where the Emperor lives, which is very Art Nouveau, very elegant, lots of golds and lots of purples. The planet Harkonnen, the planet Gedi Prime where the Harkonnen live. Reds, raked angles, very severe cutting kinds of joins of pieces of architecture. Giving you a very uncomfortable look. And then Vittorio has created a lot of raked angles within that to give you even more sense of unease. And then you come to the palace in Arrakeen, which is this elegant desert Moroccan palace in the middle of nowhere, which has stood for centuries and centuries. And you can almost feel the fact that this is an ancient place. And then you get out into the Fremen communities where the Sietches are, and you see how they cook and how they live. It's not just that they've dug holes in the walls and live in caves. And I think that all of those different environments will be, first of all, instantly recognizable, but also will give you, as I say, at one look, a sense of who these people are and what their history is.
What is this for?
An old custom, I'm told. Guests ceremoniously splash water on the floor after washing their hands. They save the squeezings.
Demeaning custom.
We are actually now in a main hall. This is the main entrance that connects our exterior with interiors of Arrakis Palace. This staircase going up on the second floor, and with those balcony you can go in the private quarters. Actually, it's everything still under construction, and we must be finished very soon with this set. We are now actually in a private quarters. This is the Leto's and Jessica private quarters. Bedroom. It's still under construction, but they're already start to paint the walls and prepare other things for the painting. Actually, all of those colors that you see now on the wall, you know, there it was the big researching from a lot of books, papers, and everything, you know, and it's really, we prepared this very carefully about the colors. But this is general colors that we will use in Arrakis Palace. This, I told you, this kind of brown, sepia, and ochre tone on sand color, you know, that we will use in Arrakis.
Well, I mean, the whole thing, the amount of detail in the set is very exciting. It can be a bit overwhelming sometimes because the sets are so fantastic. It's like, will I be able to be as fantastic?
Well, like the production design, I wanted a costume design that was at first instantly recognizable, one family to another, one community to another. But they also had to have color and design that really told you psychologically where the different tribes were coming from. When I came to Prague, I knew that there was a designer here named Theodor Pištek who had won an Academy Award for Amadeus. And I also knew that he was kind of a national treasure here in the Czech Republic because he's one of their premier artists. I was lucky enough to have an interview with him. He didn't really want to do the job at first because he doesn't like sci-fi. I said, Dodo, this is not sci-fi, okay? We're not going to have people in sort of body-fitting Star Trek outfits. I want you to think of this as Shakespeare. I want you to think of this as Oriental, because we've created a design concept that is very much an amalgam of sort of Arab Oriental. He became intrigued. He started doing drawings. Within a week, I had a pile of drawings for the different characters. It was phenomenal. So, like the production design, every wardrobe identifies immediately the world that you're in. But more than that, it gives you a psychological insight into the tribe, if you will, that we're dealing with. The Fremen have a certain look. The Harkonnen have a look that is instantly tells you what they are about.
A popular man arouses jealousy, and Duke Leto is a very popular man. The other great houses will be glad to get rid of him, even though they would never admit it. The spice will flow.
I think that the wardrobe is as much a story element as the production design or the photography.
Shake.
All right, what we're about to start with here is scene 214, where Othium, one of the young Fremen fighters, is about to blow the Harkonnen barracks, which has been taken over previously. He's about to start the first beginning of the Fremen raids that essentially set the Harkonnen off balance.
Aby tam opravdu, anebo když to prostě mám, aby tam, že máš kameru tohle, aby tam opravdu bylo obrovský.
Peter Drozda, he's the stunt coordinator, and I wouldn't mess with him, put it that way, because I think along with 6 other guys, with one hand, he could throw us all over a wall and not even think about it. He used to be an Olympic wrestler. It's very difficult, some of these sequences, because they are effectively unarmed. So there's only so many knife moves you can come up with, you know. But in actual fact, he's come up with about 3 times as many as I could ever make up, you know. So it's been fun.
The outside of this big fireball, and 3 explosions that go off in there.
Which big fireball where?
It's going to be the last explosion is going to be a fireball that's going to occur right here.
In front of this tank, or this thing?
Yeah, anywhere in there. We can touch it around.
1, 2, 3. Mortars going off, coming out this way, out of the walls.
And then right here, the biggest of the fireballs.
Okay, and have you coordinated with Peter Droste who's going to be where?
See, what you got to do. No. See, what you got to do is put the thing down and then look through the camera.
We'll have a series of explosions that Jim is setting up here. One will be starting off behind the Thopter mortar blast. Two more propane mortars in the foreground. Three over here, three air mortars with debris, and the largest pyro propane mortar will be directly in front of us here. Peter Droste will have to first set up, in coordination with Jim, where his stuntmen will be. These will be a combination of Harkonnen soldiers and Fremen workers that will coordinate with the blast themselves.
This is a propane mortar. We pressurized propane in it. It's got a flashback. It's got a very large, quick valve that lets most of the propane out at once, and then it's lit, and it creates a big fireball. It's pretty cool.
As far as my involvement on set, my responsibility is simply once we get on set, of course, we've planned out everything fairly carefully. We have storyboards and we have shot designs, and we've gone through meetings and discussed the shots and the lighting and the whole concept of everything.
Roll cameras. All right, guys, go hot. Action.
The production designer, Kreka, has done a wonderful job with creating the sets and the environment, and of course Vittorio Storaro photographing all of this and bringing all of that together. And so now with the visual effects, we sort of add the last element to all of these images and hopefully make it a complete world.
Mauro, ti stai allontanando. Carl, be close to her. Not so fast. There, this is the distance, you see? Today, our main expression is cinema, is images. So most of the creative people are coming, doesn't matter from United States, Russia, China, Czech Republic, Italy, whatever. They're going together, they finish on the screen.
I think the international aspect of the crew and the cast has really enriched this production. But it's a real Babylon. I mean, we have many different languages going on. You can walk down the room and you can hear Italian being translated into Czech, being translated into Ukrainian, being translated back into French and English and German.
From now on, we speak the ladies' language.
I think that it's given us all a sense of the world that we're trying to describe. Because after all, that's what Dune is. It's a universe of different peoples, all held together in this empire that is that's got a certain amount of tension and centrifugal force pulling it apart. Not unlike the world we live in right now, which I think is the beauty of the story.
Their shields are going up. They've given us their answer.
The Thopters have been activated.
It's time, Gurney.
The thing about Dune that I think makes it timeless, that gives it such a wide audience that is not narrowly constrained to sci-fi aficionados, is the fact that it really is a story about the human condition. Yes, it's archetypal, and it's set in the future. It has a monster, it has different royal families feuding and so forth, but it deals with human issues in a very classic, traditional narrative. It is not about technology overwhelming human beings. It's not about space wars. It's really a story that in some ways we've seen many, many times in different genres. Herbert has simply chosen to set it 10,000 years in the future in this distant universe. But it's a story that we can all recognize and reach out to. It's not alien.
Now you understand.
The saga of Dune is far from over.